Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nayaswamin Padma, and I'm here today on this snowy day in the Pacific Northwest to bring you Paramahansa Yogananda's explanations of the Rubayait of Omar Khayyam, that great mystical poem, spiritual poem, as he called it. I want to begin by reading this next quatrain to you. It's quatrain 16. Think in the batter'd Caravanserai, whose doorways are alternate night and day, how sultan after sultan with his pomp abode his hour or two and went his way. I want to play Swami Kriyananda singing that quatrain now. Let's see.
Stanza 16. Think in this battered caravanserai, whose doorways are alternate night and day, how sultan after sultan with his pomp abode his hour or two and went his way. Paraphrase. How brief their sojourn in life's storm-battered inn, Earth's rulers, mighty historical events. The doorway of their entrances and exits opens onto a cosmic environment. Yet in their little rooms of separate existence, see how human beings stride back and forth, shouting self-importantly, paying no heed in their petty preoccupations to that greater reality. Life is an infinite study in contrasts. Light and darkness, sunlight and rain, success and disappointment, power boldly claimed by a few, and mind-numbing impotence suffered by so many. Earth's emperors rule in pomp and dignity, surrounded by their colorful courts and by their bragging families. Then, one by one, they are snatched away from their moment of splendor to vanish into the silent chamber of death, into the cosmic unknown.
A pretty profound quatrain this is, talking about the cycles of life and death, life and death, life and death that every soul experiences until we find our freedom in the divine. It feels not unlike, I remember when I first started studying Eastern thought, the human being on that hamster wheel, you know, at a certain point, we want to step off the wheel of life. We want to not keep going again and again in those circles, chasing our tails. And so this quatrain describes in just a few simple sentences how that happens to each and every one of us. And I know from being at this point in what I call the last quarter of my game, of my life, that you get a certain sense of urgency. You get a certain sense of, I need to do this now. I don't have a lot of time left to waste. And isn't it true that when people are young, they will go ahead and keep running in circles and chasing their tails and hopping in the bars, as you know, this reading implies. And yet, you know, when the time comes, we realize that all of that has been a waste of our time, that we haven't used well those precious moments that we have in order to experience our own inner divinity. We have allowed our egos to be in the front seat of our car rather than in the back seat, where the ego, which we need in order to function to some degree on this earth plane, but it needs to have its proper relationship to our soul nature. And so, whereas on the one hand, there's no time or space in God, on the other hand, there is time and space in our finite human existence, or even the analogies that it was drawing in the Yogananda explained in the paraphrase, you know, whether it's insects and how long they live or other life forms, there's just seeming to be a finite amount of time. And indeed, we know, I was just looking at my own hands the other day and realizing how many wrinkles they suddenly have on them. My hands look like my grandmother's hands. How can that be? We all think of ourselves as the eternal 22 years old. But the reality is that as long as we are in these bodies, as long as we are dealing with our egos, then there is a finite sense about our time. And we want to use that time not just to prepare for another better world. I always really never cared for that kind of thinking or philosophy, but because simply we are happier. Why turn away from our own happiness, from that which will make us more fulfilled, appreciate beauty more, appreciate consciousness more, appreciate subtleties more, truly appreciate absolutely everything more, because we are more conscious. You know, I've always thought it was interesting that in high school, they would teach us about the brain and the fact that we only use a tiny percent of our brain power. And once I understood better the spiritual life and super consciousness, as Yogananda explains it, then I realized that we have within us the ability to use our full consciousness, our full brain, and use it to understand better, to gain wisdom, to experience love, to experience everything that is divine that resides within us. We are, Yogananda used to say, there's enough energy in just one little pinch of our finger to light the city of Chicago for a week. We have but a fraction of our awareness intact. And there is so much more joy that comes when we can live in full awareness, in full consciousness. And that is the import of this particular quatrain in Yogananda's explanations of the Rubayait of Omar Khayyam, edited by Swami Kriyananda. Joy to you, and we will see you again on Monday. Bye-bye now.